This is a divisive 2024 presidential campaign, and the man in the center of the Supreme Court case is not only leading in the polls, but he also has 18 Republican attorneys general now who filed an amicus brief urging the highest court in the land to reverse the lower court and grant Trump blanket immunity. This effort is being led by Alabama's Attorney General Steve Marshall. Attorney General Marshall joins me now. Steve, good to see you. You know, I want to look back at something you said about this case. You said if this prosecution is designed to silence or imprison the sitting president's political opponent right before the election, it is an abuse of the justice system that the Supreme Court should take seriously. You know, the question that's before the court, Steve, is not about imprisonment. It's about whether a president should have blanket immunity. We're talking about checks and balances. We have already witnessed Trump pushing the boundaries of checks and balances, like challenging certified election results and rallying his base that led to an insurrection. So I want to ask you, are you concerned at all with abuse of power?
Clearly a concern about abuse of power, but let's look at where power has been abused already. It took 30 months for the special prosecutor to bring these charges that relate to facts that have been reported for quite some time. And when we look about the question of delay, whether or not we're going to have a trial in a timely manner, they don't need to look at President Trump's trial team. The question is why the special counsel had to wait so long to bring these charges to begin with.
So, Steve, the Justice Department's attorneys argue that Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election results were not official conduct, but rather campaign conduct, that Trump's efforts were not motivated for the country, but for self-interest in re-election. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. And in fact, if you look at the arguments being made before the court, Trump's legal team specifically said that this immunity claim is not tied to private acts, but only to the official actions of the president, which is entirely consistent with how we've treated the president under civil law, to be able to grant absolute immunity relating to their official actions. And it's broader than simply President Trump. This has to do with the ability of presidents to be able to lead the executive branch without looking over their shoulder. We think that this is an important argument, and in fact, the special counsel must have believed the same thing because he attempted to have the Supreme Court to be able to consider it before the D.C. Court of Appeals could weigh in to begin with.
But the core tenet of our justice system is equal justice for all. Why should the president be immune to that?
Well, we've recognized the issue of immunity for officials of a public nature for quite some time. This is obviously the first time in which we've had to examine whether or not presidential immunity would apply to a criminal prosecution. President Trump didn't bring this upon himself, but in fact, it was brought not only by prosecutors who waited many, many months to be able to come forward, but let's look at also what's going on in the state of Georgia, where we have prosecutors running a campaign on whether or not they're going to look into Donald Trump. I've been a prosecutor now for almost 30 years. My responsibility is to follow facts and not chase people. What we've seen with the efforts around Donald Trump is an effort with a results-driven investigation to try to convict a man, not to allow the facts to dictate where those prosecutions should go.
So, Steve, you mentioned Georgia. ABC News is now reporting that, based on analysis, Trump appears to be an unindicted co-conspirator in Arizona's case against so-called fake electors. He's also the unindicted co-conspirator in Michigan's case, and we have the Georgia racketeering case related to election fraud. Wouldn't a grant of immunity for a president accused of such crimes endanger a peaceful transfer of power?
What is more, at least encouraging for me, is the fact that the president's going to have the ability to use immunity to try to address what are democratically driven prosecutions of the man who's now in line to be in the presidency again. The criminal justice system ought to be acted impartially to give individuals a fair opportunity to litigate their claims. It doesn't need to be an aggressive effort to use the criminal justice system to be able to support other political candidates in an election, nor to attack those they don't want to serve in office.
One more question. If immunity is granted, this could extend to any future president, including a Democratic president. Would you support that?
Absolutely.
Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall, appreciate your time.